You know what? I'll just say this. Is the grocery store going to get mad at me if I complain about the carts not being returned?
Wait, what?
Like if I come on the podcast and complain about something or talk about something, am I supposed to talk about no people, places, or things while I'm here?
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you're having a really good day so far. If you're new here, my name is Taylor. I come to you from Baltimore City, Maryland, and here on my YouTube channel, I feature content that is generally focused on knitting and spinning. In this week's episode of what I call the Thread to Mend podcast, I want to sit down and share with you my newest hand-spun yarn, talk a little bit about how it turned out, my process making it, what I plan to knit it into, and what I do with my remnant bits and bobs. So I might also dive into a few patterns I have favorited or queued because I have a lot of new ideas of things that I want to cast on in the coming months. I have no project updates yet on what I shared in my previous video because I haven't been knitting as much as I had hoped. I do find that knitting a worsted weight yarn on small circumference objects is a bit hard on the hands. So as soon as I start, I want to stop. So I really need to start pushing through my sleeves of my Rhinebeck sweater, which you may or may not know is a colorwork, top-down yoke, worsted weight, very heavy object. I would like to knit a second backup to wear in case the weather is warm, which it would likely be if I knit a very heavy garment. So I'm thinking about, I don't have it near me. Or do I? I have one of two skeins. I have two skeins of a DK weight yarn that I think I might try to knit into a short sleeve ranunculus. I just don't know. It is a merino Lincoln blend, I think, which means that it is a bit coarse. I'm not sure if a t-shirt would be the best application of such a fiber blend. But this is a really lovely yarn I purchased at Rhinebeck, so it'd be nice to wear as a finished garment to Rhinebeck. I'm just a little worried that because the ranunculus pattern is such a weird one, right? Like it's like every yoke of all sizes is knit the same until you get to the end of the lace. I'm just afraid I'm going to make it too big too soon and run out of yarn, kind of like I did with my most recent project, which I can dive into more later. I talked a lot about it last week's video, but as you might already know, I lost all the audio to the second half. So I'll try to talk more about it again when the project is done and I can wear it and show it to you finished. But anyway, what I did work on this week was finishing the second bobbin of singles and plying together this very beautiful Jacob lamb's wool fleece. This is, I think I might have bought this fleece at Rhinebeck. It could have either been Rhinebeck or Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival that I picked this up, and it is so lovely. It's a little less soft than the white fiber. I don't know if it's because I prepared it differently, or maybe my memory is that it's more soft than it is, but you know how yarn is. It's softer in the hand than on the neck. When I bought this fleece, I split all the fiber up as best as I could, and I spun all of the white, I spun all of the mixed, and I still need to spin all of the brown. When I spun these two skeins, my plan was to knit these and this into a Hey Sailor button-up t-shirt pattern by Andrea Mowry. I don't know that I'm going to do that still because if I look at the yardage of these skeins, which one skein is 104 grams, the other skein is 99.5 grams, but this has only 308 yards per like 100 grams. This one has 350 yards for a little more than 100. So they're kind of more of a sport weight than they are fingering. And that pattern is knit in Knitting for Olive's cotton merino blend, which I've never seen or touched in person, but I do have skeins of their merino yarn, and it's very fine fingering. Of course, I could look up online the cotton merino yards per grams sort of ratio. I feel like this is a little bit heavy for that, which I'd kind of just been sort of blocking out of my mind in preparation for spinning the rest of what would be a project. And I haven't written it down, though I should. I haven't even weighed this. I think I did weigh this. This is like 120 grams. I don't have the exact number, but it's 120 grams and it is like 470 yards, which is a bit lighter than these two. It's sort of a true fingering weight yarn, and it is not, the drafting is not all that I have. Okay, let me put this away. I wanted to show you this too. I'll get back to this in a second, but I wanted to show you how yarn kind of behaves a little different. So I was much more consistent in my drafting of this fiber, but what I was not consistent in was the amount of twist I let into the singles. And I found that there are some areas, like right here, you can see it a lot. You see how it's like really kinky? It looks like it's been knit and unknit. There's too much twist in those singles. And that makes for a very ropey yarn. But because I didn't over ply the yarn, I kind of gave it a bit of a loose ply. It's just not my best quality hand spun. And the issue kind of started at the beginning with the initial single ply spins. They were too tight. They were too wound up. Too much life in that wool on those bobbins for such a while. So I regret putting a little too much spin into it. This is a project that I started so long ago, and it took so long to finish. I don't blame myself for having some inconsistency here. It happens. That's one of the reasons why when I start a project, I try to finish it like without starting another. But that's sort of just a byproduct of not practicing, is like inconsistency. You really have to practice to be consistent. So this skein will pretty much either not be used, or it'll come in handy if I need a little extra yardage, or it could make its way into a dog sweater, something that's not so precious. I haven't weighed this or measured it at all, but this skein did come out a bit better because I have, for my wheel, I have, there's always a bobbin on my wheel, and then there's a lazy Kate attached to my wheel with 2 bobbins. And I think that my wheel might have come with 3 bobbins. Because plying is a little easier on a lazy Kate that has tension, I purchased a tensioned lazy Kate that is separate from my wheel that holds 3 additional bobbins. I feel like that's the sweet spot for me, because that way I can have 2 individual 2-ply projects working at a time if I want to, or I can spin up a ton of singles if I want to, and I have enough bobbins to ply everything I need. Anytime I've spun a project and there's like a remnant amount of singles on one bobbin or another, if I have a remnant bobbin from a previous spin and a current one, I ply them together. And so I'm always clearing my bobbins by creating these very small skeins of marled yarn. And that's what I have here. It's a combination of, I think, a merino and this Jacob, the light color is the Jacob lamb. And I, again, don't know what I'll use this for, but it might make a nice project. I mean, this could be the start of a really great granny square thing happening in the future, some sort of scrappy project. So I'll probably start a stash of hand spun remnants. I know I have one already, actually. I will probably just add these to that and tuck them away for a while until I have a project in mind. It's really just to not waste that I keep those things. But this skein I think is very special. Like I said, it's 120 grams and it is quite balanced compared to that one I showed you. It has nice drape, but it has a lot of squish too. When I say nice drape, I don't mean a lot of drape. It's not overly plied and ropey. It feels like a real yarn. It feels very soft. A little bit underspun for my liking. There's a few areas, most of the areas, where I think like, oh, I could have used just a tiny bit more twist to really get the look I love. But I think it'll knit nicely. I think I did a better job at not over spinning my singles and over plying the yarn to make the very ropey hand spun I've made in the past. This, for example, is a Cordale skein. I don't know, you can't really tell on screen how it feels, but it's very dense. It feels like a Mr. Clean magic eraser, if you think of the density. It has that kind of memory foam feel, whereas this feels like a regular sponge, like a regular polyfill pillow, not a memory foam pillow, but a polyfill. It has more air, which is great. And because it came out a little finer than these, I'm not going to pair them together, although I still could. I've been watching a lot of knitting podcasts lately. I want to feel inspired again. I was watching Knit Cheek, and she has a great channel. If you haven't checked out her channel yet, I would definitely do a little search for Knit Cheek, one word. And she's doing a knit along with another creator, I forget who, and they're doing a vest knit along, knitting vests. And I think I could get on board with that because I just finished this skein of yarn. I'm having a hard time getting this wound back up. But anyway, I was watching her channel and I was looking into some of these vest patterns she had shared, and there's one vest pattern I really like and I think I might knit it. I've never thought of knitting a vest for myself. It's not something I typically reach for, mostly because it feels a bit formal, and it's also, like I've said many times on my channel, it's not really that cold here for me to need a wool vest in like the spring or the fall. Maybe in the winter it would be nice, over a button up, maybe under a blazer. I think that is what I intend to do with this. And there was a pattern I will put on the screen for you to see. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. I think it's designed by, I'll put it on the screen. I don't know. Knit with a fingering held with a silk mohair. And I have these 2 remnant skeins and a tiny bit left over from a third I stuffed in the middle of one of them. But these are from a former project of mine. And I have about 50 something grams, which should be, I mean, the yardage adds up to match the yardage of this, and they're a very similar color. And I think that although I love the slight variegation to this, because of color pooling and the subtle striping that occurs when you're plying together a variegated natural fiber, I think that the holding a silk mohair together with it will very much even out the color variances throughout the project. So I like the idea of holding this with a silk mohair, even though the Biche and Bouche silk mohair, it's not my favorite. I am a huge fan of Isayar's silk mohair. That's the one I would buy again. This is a silk mohair. Personally, I would not, but it's not the worst. It's just not the best. And I have it. It's already in my stash. I'm trying to knit yarn from my stash still. It's been years that I've talked about knitting yarn from my stash, and I will say a lot of my yarn stash haunts my thinking a lot of the time. Sometimes I regret ever buying it. Sometimes I think, when will I ever use it? And I can pull out those 2 sweater quantities I'm thinking about the most later on in the video if you're interested to know. I forgot to do that, so I will show you now. I cannot figure out what to knit these 300 grams of Quince & Company's Finch yarn into. I have 6 skeins of this. It just feels like really nice yarn construction. I think not the most fine fiber. So it's just tough. Like I've become spoiled. I like knitting with very fine wool, and this is just not that. So I want to knit something with it because I've had this yarn for like 9 years now. Like, I would like to wear it eventually, but I don't know when. And then I was thinking maybe this would be a nice contrast color for like a colorwork yoke thing, like bringing together warm and cool. Also have this like sister skein. It could also really work, probably a little bit better even. So yeah, I wonder when I'll get around to that all the time. And I have another. It's the same one I talked about in a previous video. Thinking I had a plan, but I don't. It's the Chickadee. This is a little heavier, has a few less yards, and I have even more of this. I think I have 400 grams of this. So not sure what I'll ever knit this into. Same with the knitting for Olive. I have plans for this, and I have an idea for 4 fingering weight skeins. I just haven't really thought it through entirely. So I have lots of ideas for all of my stash all of the time, but these 2 sweater quantities just stump me. But I think that this could be a really good project. It might even be a great Rhinebeck project if I want to knit some hand spun into a very small wearable piece, especially since the Ranunculus t-shirt. Will I regret it? I don't know. It's one of those patterns that everyone's knit, and I've even knit it, but I don't own it any longer. I got rid of that a long time ago because it fit horribly. I thought I knit it according to the instructions, but maybe I didn't read it well. And I see so many people wearing Ranunculus that looks so good on them, and I want that for me. But I also don't want to knit like the most popular sweater on the planet just because everyone else did. But I also want to have it in my wardrobe because everyone else does. So I don't know. It would be nice to have something to wear to Rhinebeck that's not the heaviest thing I've ever made of all time. So I'm kind of on the fence. You help me decide. I think I'll probably cast on the vest whenever the knit along starts. I'm not really a knit along knitter. I'm too all over the place to commit to rules and regulations. But I think I'll probably cake this skein and knit a swatch, see how I like the fabric and where that takes us. And the same could be said about the Ranunculus, but I find it's easier to just cast that project on because the gauge is so wonky anyway. I did find a pattern, a project page for the Ranunculus pattern by Bobby. I don't recall her name on Ravelry, but she has a YouTube channel also called Knitter's Niche. She has a Ravelry project page of at least one Ranunculus I can think of. I think it's her number 3, and she specified the needles she used, and I think she chose a DK weight yarn for that one, and it looks great on her. She knit the size 3, which maybe because she went down a couple needle sizes, that might be why. I think I might just follow her lead and do what she did with my 2 DK weight skeins and see, at least start from there and see where it gets me. And also look at the differences between the smaller size and size 3, because I think when I purchased that pattern, it was just a one size pattern. And I think since that time it evolved. It definitely went through some sort of upgrade in the many years it has been online, but I'm thinking about doing that as well. And then I have a design idea. I have really been thinking a lot about designing again. Designing knitting patterns is something that I started a few years ago now, and it was really just a mental exercise for me to do something I always wanted. I always dreamed of like being a knitwear designer and like publishing my own ideas and things that I wanted to wear, and I'm very lucky to have done that. I had I had a job for a brief time, about 1.5 years, at a clothing distribution warehouse where it was a vertically integrated company. We manufactured the clothes that we sold and distributed wholesale and retail, and that manufacturer distributed clothing that was manufactured for extra small, sometimes I think even double extra small, up to 12X, for mostly the motorcycle community, which has a very diverse size range. And I got to see what garments of that size look like. I would very often unpack returns and put them back into the inventory, and so I could see what a men's 12X looked like. It was relatively short in comparison to what you might think a 12X is. The major difference was the width and where in the width that extra width was in the construction, which is not in the shoulders, it's always in kind of the underarm area, the chest area. So I got to see that, and I think that really helped me gain perspective in grading sizes that I've never worn before. I've never seen sometimes in person garments made to fit that size. And so that experience taught me more about that and kind of gave me the motivation to try and continue trying. And I've published patterns, and I'm really proud of that work. I think I did a good job. And I see projects that people make, and I'm proud of them for accomplishing the task of making a garment, which is a huge deal. I think a lot of people think about knitting garments and don't ever try, and I'm here online because I really want to show what I'm doing and be present in the world and express myself as an individual person that has a passion and a deep interest in knitting and creating garments and fashioning a wardrobe that is unique to me. And I just want to keep sharing that. It's been hard though. I've been trying to stay consistent online here, uploading, and just the last year has been challenging for me in my personal life. It's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of my dad dying, which it's not really his death that is tragic for me. After he died, I was quite relieved that he didn't have to suffer any longer, but it was the many months leading up to his passing that were really traumatic for me personally. Not just seeing him sick, but witnessing the treatment he experienced from family and from the medical profession in general. They took great care of them, great care of him when they could. But there were many obstacles along that journey for him through Medicare. Yeah, it was really difficult to watch someone have to settle for what really felt unwise. It felt unwise to allow a sick and vulnerable person have to struggle in that way. And like, I hate to get emotional here online and talk about such unpopular things with a knitting community that's here for the knitting, but it's just something I've been carrying. Just feeling that all of the obstacles he had to overcome to get the care and medical treatment that he needed for so long was really a big challenge. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people personally have to live through, which is great. I don't want that for anyone. But it's those who have that privilege of comfort and security that sometimes don't consider the reality of many other people who vote for administrations and bills that just really challenge people's lives. Not to be dramatic, but for some people, access to medical care is a life and death situation, and it's just something I've been carrying around in my heart, thinking about all of the difficulty that he had to endure in his lifetime, in his last few months of, and years even. There's so much I don't know because I am estranged from my family. They are not people that really speak to me or interact with me much at all. And so I went out of my way a lot to comfort my dad when he was sick and to speak with him on the phone every day for hours when no one was there for him. No one visited him. No one cared that he was alone. I'm trying to keep it together for this. I know it doesn't look like it, but I have just been carrying around with me the last year and a half or so my frustration with the US medical system, the insurance system, the way things work or don't work here, the weird lack of empathy some people have for those who are less well off. You know, it really is astounding to me that people could think it's a good thing to limit other people's access to healthcare. I'm in just such shock and grief on that subject in particular. I can't believe that people think we're better off without hospitals functioning in rural areas, without quick and immediate access to care for some people. It just makes me sick to think I am among people who could not care less for other people. And it's really alienating to think that so many around me believe that people like my father should just do what exactly? I don't know. I'm just so tired of grieving and feeling this anger and this sadness. And I just want to move on. I want to be creative. And I want to be productive. And I want to make things that people enjoy. And I just don't have the... This is not true. I do have the skill and the intention to do it. I just don't make time for it because I'm so overwhelmed with grief. And I feel like I really wish I could rely on family to make this process easier. But the sad reality is I cannot rely on family to process my grief. I'm just doing it alone. All of that to say, I have had a hard time showing up for this channel lately. I tried taking time away to rest and recuperate and take care of myself. I feel like I've been doing that in my life. But even still, it's been hard to sit in this chair and be authentic and have stuff to talk about. And I really want to get back to that. I really want to get back to my knitting and to making things like publishing a new pattern in the future. That's something I want to do again, and I want to commit my time and my energy towards that. But there's this like obstacle that I'm facing currently. It's this intrusive thought that is sort of instilled in me because of my trauma growing up in a household that was not a safe environment for a young kid to like be their own self and fulfilled and content and secure. So I'm going through the process of like reparenting my wounded child, you know, like on my own, no like family around to kind of reaffirm like, yeah, that was fucked up. I keep having this intrusive thought that it's something that I heard my parents say my whole life. I listened to my dad say it again as an adult while I was comforting him while in the hospital. And he would say, "You are such a bad kid." And I finally stood up to him and I said, I was not a bad kid. I was not a bad kid. I might have fought back and stood up for what I believed, but that didn't make me bad. And I'm really glad I got to have that conversation with him before he had passed, because I needed him to understand that that is a toxic way to approach parenthood. But anyway, when you are told your whole life you're bad, and even in adulthood, your mother shows you she doesn't care about you, she doesn't love you, you start to think like, if my mother doesn't love me or care for me, no one could or does. Or, you know, if my mother watches me here on YouTube but doesn't care to know me personally, many other people must be watching me to judge me, to hate me. And it's just this like really gross thought that like lives inside my mind that I can't escape from, because I allow myself to be here and to be online and to be vulnerable to whatever anyone wants to think about me. They have the right to think about. It's really not my business. But I'm aware of the fact that I allow myself to be seen here, and I want to have that in my life someplace, somewhere, anywhere. It just happens to be online right now, and it's just hard to do. It's hard to do and be creative, and I want to be creative again. And I know that once I can get my creative juices flowing, like it will feed into the podcast, and the podcast will do better for it. And I want to get there. I want to express my fear and anxiety here online, because I want to like let it go finally and like move on from it and just be honest about it and not continue to hide from it, which is what I feel like I've been doing for the several weeks that I don't talk about it. I think about telling you, and then I don't, because I feel like this isn't the time or place. I should talk to a therapist, not to my community or audience here online. But it feels very relevant to my experience here. And I know that those of you who take the time to comment and to share about how I inspire you to spin or to knit, that, you know, you might get it, you might understand, and you might know why I need to say it. Even though I'm a crying mess, I'm still very excited to go to Rhinebeck. We were planning to go last year when things were going on in my life, and then my dad passed, and we still went. And I don't want to associate that pain in my life with this annual event forever. But right now it feels like a seasonal thing for me until more time passes. And I've just been going through a lot right now with that grief and moving through it, and not a lot has really helped me deal with it. Mostly just escaping my grief is what helps the most, which is not ideal. But anyway, it's just a long process that takes a lifetime. So I feel better getting that off my chest. I like that we're moving on from this subject now. I went to get a tissue and I woke up Star Baby, and I thought I would drag her in here to say hello. Some of you might remember her. She's been a bit of an icon here on this channel, and she is, I think she's like 14. Oh, you can't see her. Here she is for you. Star Baby Moonchild. She's doing pretty good. She used to hear me podcasting in my yarn room over here, and she would jump on my lap and join us for the video, and she no longer does it now because she can't hear anymore. So she doesn't hear when I'm talking to myself in my room, and she doesn't know to find me and to jump on my lap. But I suspect also she has, and it could just be her deafness, but I suspect too that she has like maybe some form of dementia, because her behavior is very different than it used to be. We do medicate her at night so that she will stop screaming into my face and waking me up. Again, I'm not sure if that's because she can't hear that she's screaming, but anyway, she is living her best life, sleeping in bed all day, every day. Let's see if I can give you the cat cam. I also grabbed my iPad because I wanted to show you a couple patterns that I added to my queue. So there's one that I'm definitely going to make because I already have the yarn, and it is the Laulu V-neck tee by Sari Norlund. I happen to have purchased this exact yarn with the quantity I would need before this pattern ever came out, and Casey over at the Young Folk Knits podcast showed me this pattern she was testing, and I was just in love. So that's going to be my next complicated cast on. I don't know if I'll be casting it on before February or March to knit and wear for spring, but that is definitely in my future. Let me see if I can adjust. I'll adjust my placements of things later. The next is a vest. So this is a pattern I found from the Knit Cheek podcast episode. It's called the Auguste Slipcover, and it's this really gorgeous cable. I wouldn't call this a vest as much as a tank top, but I guess they're one and the same. It's by Johanna Gehrisch. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name, but it is knit with a light fingering and a lace held together, which comes out with a sport weight yarn. And I was thinking that it's possible I could get a gauge with these two skeins. So let me just check my yardage. I have 350 and 308, so that's 658. So it seems like I would need 819 yards, which this is not really close. So I don't think I have enough yarn to knit a cable tank top. Shucks. All right, and this is the pattern I was talking about casting on. It is the Hobbiton vest by Fable Knitwear. I really like the form-fitting nature. I think it's very cute, and I would like to wear it. Anyway, I'm not sure what I will cast on next or when. I think I need to just finish what I've started and see what I have time for, but that's that on that, and I think this is it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far into this week's video, let me know with the crying emoji. I'm just kidding. Give me your favorite emoji. Give me something that's not crying. I would prefer that. But thank you so much for watching. If you want to find me on social media, my name is TAYLOREOWEN on Ravelry and Instagram. You can find me on TikTok, but not really. as Taylor Knits, and I want to thank you again one last time. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and that you take care.